just going to let Claire introduce herself because she has planned on that. So thanks for joining us. And as for all our talks in September, this talk is sponsored by Tacoma Strategies. So I'm going to hand over to you, Claire.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me on a Friday afternoon and not going to the pub. My name is Claire Browning. I work for the South African Museum, Iziko, in Cape Town, and I'm the curator of Karoo Palaeontology here at the museum. Before I worked here, I've worked at the museum for about 3 years now, and before I worked at the museum, I used to work for the Council for Geoscience. I worked at the CGS for about 8 years. And yeah, so I come from PE, I studied at NMU now. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. But today's talk's going to be a relatively short one. I thought I'd talk sort of for maybe 30-35 minutes, and then we can have question time after that. And yeah, so I'm going to stop my video now so that I can actually start the presentation. I'm quite new to Zoom, so if I hope I've gotten it right, let me do that. Stop video. Okay. Good. So like I said, I'm a curator of Karoo Palaeontology, and this talk is based on collaborative work that I've recently done with a number of different institutions. And it's about the Boonstra Diorama story and how we were able to preserve this diorama through digital preservation means. Okay, I should be able to advance to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so my talk today is going to be divided up into 5 parts. First of all, I'd like to speak about the dioramas in terms of their historical significance. I'll introduce their significance, and I'll also touch on the reasons why the museum decided to take them down. The second part of the talk will be about the digital preservation project. And as part of this, I'll highlight the collaborations that made this preservation possible. And we'll also explore some of the digital archives, and I'll take you along for a panoramic tour of the dioramas, which are now available for everybody to enjoy online. For the third part of today's talk, I'll speak about the deinstallation process and some of the secrets that we find behind the scenes. And the last 2 parts, I'll speak about the exciting new plans that we have for the future with the data set that we have, as well as how we engage with the public during outreach and engagements, public engagement activities. Okay, so let's start with the historical significance of the Boonstra Dioramas. So until recently, the Boonstra Diorama exhibition was hosted, or housed rather, on the ground floor of the South African Museum. The exhibition entrance was sort of tucked away behind the main stairway in the main hall. And a lot of people will probably remember this exhibition from when they were taken through as children. So the exhibition was completed in 1959, and it took about 10 years to complete. It was made up of 9 diorama spaces and displays. And in these dioramas were featured the fossil creatures of the Karoo. And these creatures were set against a background of what environment they probably would have come from. So it's these extinct animals that are set against a painted backdrop of their ancient environment. So besides these models of the fossils, there were also real fossils on display. And these fossils were contextualized against painted backdrops of the current Karoo landscape. Everything about the dioramas was carefully constructed to make sure the fossils of a Karoo came alive in the minds of the museum visitors. It was all about the visitor's experience. And these dioramas were the first of their kind to showcase the diversity of the Karoo fossils using this engaging style of exhibition. And this was all thanks to the vision of Dr. Dirk Boonstra, who was the curator and researcher at Karoo Palaeontology in the Karoo Palaeontology department at the South African Museum at the time. So Dr. Boonstra dedicated his life to understanding the mysteries of ancient pre-mammalian relatives. And these relatives looked a lot like modern day reptiles and dinosaurs, but they're a lot older, they're much older, and they are not related to reptiles and dinosaurs in the sense that we know now. They're pre-mammalian relatives. But at the time, Boonstra and his colleagues created these dioramas to represent the best available scientific knowledge about these extinct animals and plants, and specifically they aimed to show how the animals interacted, so ecosystem function, and kind of create a time capsule, these windows in time around 200 to about 270 million years ago. So in this way, the space was more than just edutainment. It was a space that inspired a generation of scientists, and these scientists have uncovered more fossils that have added to the building blocks of knowledge. And in this slide, you can see Boonstra. This is a photo, a black and white photo of him working on one of on the finishing touches of one of the dioramas. And then you can see a photograph of what they look like, sort of with a colorized photograph. Yeah, so let's go to the next slide. Okay. So building on the efforts of science education pioneers like Boonstra, modern scientists now have an even better understanding of Karoo fossils. And the unfortunate side effect of this is that many of the models that were constructed during Boonstra's time are now scientifically inaccurate. So in 2019, a new exhibition on human evolution was proposed by some of the museum professionals at Iziko. And we sat around a table and debated whether the Boonstra dioramas should remain as a testament to history and the process of scientific discovery, or whether they should be dismantled in order to maintain a scientifically accurate and relevant museum. And in these two slides over here, you can see the sort of style of model that was created for the dioramas, and the style, the style of models that is currently sort of the state-of-the-art knowledge that showcases what the mammal-like reptiles, well, I don't want to say mammal-like reptiles, sorry, what the ancient Karoo creatures look like, and how we picture them today. So this is an image of Gorgonops scavenging on some prey in the current Stone Bones exhibition at Iziko. Okay, so there's the concept of taking down old exhibitions, and the conundrum around it is by no means a South African only issue. Museums around the world have grappled with this conundrum for a long time. Nobody has unlimited space, and it's a balance between maintaining accurate and relevant exhibition spaces while still preserving what we can of the past. So I just want to highlight two examples from overseas. The first is the Smithsonian Museum in the US, where in 2003 they started a major renovation project. And this project substituted many of the old animal displays for more scientifically accurate and modern exhibitions. And it emphasized what is currently known about evolution. This also meant that many of the specimens that were on display previously are no longer there. Another example is the London Natural History Museum in the UK, where they took down Dippy the dinosaur after it had stood in the exhibition area for about just over 100 years. So at Iziko South African Museum, we decided as a collective to remove the dioramas and to preserve them as best we can digitally. And the good news is that they are not lost forever. So thanks to technological advances, we've been able to preserve the exhibition digitally. Okay, so that brings me to part 2 of today's talk, and that is the Digital Preservation Project. Okay, So currently there's several digital technologies that exist in order to help preserve brick and mortar exhibitions. Of these, the main sort of players are LiDAR. So basically museum or LiDAR scanners are used. LiDAR, which is basically a type of laser scanning, is used in conjunction with photogrammetry. And it basically creates, or these techniques create high resolution, colored 3D models that are accurate digital replicas of the originals. But of course, the cost of this kind of thing is quite a lot. It costs a lot of money. And particular LiDAR scanning is very expensive, and often this expense is prohibitive for publicly funded museums. This is especially a problem in developing nations. And this is where collaboration saved the day. We were fortunate enough to hear about a nonprofit organization called Zamani Project. And Zamani Project basically documents heritage around, especially based in Africa, but in the Middle East and Southeast Asia and all over the place. They're based at UCT and they do some incredible work. I have copied some stuff from their website, but here's the link for anybody who'd like to go and have a look at more of their content. And they also have a great YouTube channel, which you can use where you can explore the work that they've done. Okay, so thanks to this introduction to Zamani projects, we were able to preserve the Boonstra Dioramas using LiDAR scanning, photography, and basically create as the primary objective a historical archive of the Boonstra Dioramas. And the secondary objective was to be able to create a virtual environment in which visitors can explore the Boonstra Dioramas. Okay, so I'm hoping the next slide is going to load. I wanted to show you this video that the Zamani project has done on the Cape Town City Hall. And the reason I want to show you this video is because our collaborative project with Zamani project is still in progress, but I'm hoping that something similar can be done for the Boonstra Dioramas to preserve them, or to at least allow you to see them in 3D space in a much more interactive way. So if you'll allow me, I'll quickly play this video. It's about 2 minutes. Okay, so that's the example. And one of the projects that we have, or one of the finished products that we have from the collaboration with Simani Project at the moment, is our very own 360-degree panoramic tour of the Boonstra Dioramas, which are now available online. So here's the link over here, and if you click on that, you'll be able to explore the panoramic tours of the dioramas. There's also a link on the Iziko website. Okay, but earlier today I did a quick walkthrough so that I could just show you. So there's just one more video here. Okay. So basically you can navigate this panoramic tour using your mouse, and you can zoom in on the models if you like. Let's zooming in on this little cutie. And you can pan around and move within the exhibition space. You can turn off the plan view over there at the bottom, and you can move to these little blue spots, which are called hotspots. And you'll be given an option to either explore photos, which are embedded, text, or audio.
Welcome to the Boonstra Dioramas. Dr. Lever Boonstra devoted his working life to the reptile fossils of the Great Karoo region of South Africa. During the 45 years that he worked at the South African Museum.
Okay, so I just toggled the audio off, and I've moved to another hotspot. In this case, we're looking at the Bradysorus, and this is a Bradysorus. It was one of the more difficult models to take out of the exhibition space. Okay, so let's jump to another hotspot, and I think I'll show over here some of the detailed photographs that we've got of the backdrops. Okay, so that was just a very short sort of walkthrough of the panoramic tour, and I encourage you to please share the link with whomever you think might enjoy it, and to explore these beautiful models in a virtual space. Okay, so the other part of the digital preservation project, which I felt quite passionate about personally, was documenting the backdrops. And these painted backdrops are absolutely exquisitely, beautifully painted, and they still were in very, very good condition. And so I decided to personally photograph them at incredibly high archival quality. I was lucky enough to find a Hasselblad camera at the museum that I used to do this. And just to give you an idea, the kind of quality that you get from this camera is the kind of quality that photographers use to photograph things for billboards. So it's really, really good quality. And altogether, the data set from these photographs and the LiDAR scanning is about 500 gigs of data. Okay, so I just want you to have a look at this little square over here, or little rectangle rather. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to zoom in on that little piece over there and show you what we were able to produce in terms of resolution. So before I zoom in, what you see now is basically what you would have seen if you had been physically in the Boonstra Dioramas exhibit. You wouldn't have been able to get any closer than this in the physical exhibition. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide, this is a photo mosaic that was made from about 250 images, individual images. And it was digitally enhanced and stitched together, and I took away the curvature of the walls as well. So if we zoom in a little closer, remember the little rectangle is somewhere around here. And zoom in even more, and that's the kind of quality that we were able to get. So if I put those two images side by side now, on your left-hand side, you can see the kind of resolution that you might have seen if you were a visitor standing in the physical exhibition. And then on the right is the kind of resolution that we were able to preserve and is now available online for people to be able to see. And I can't help myself, there's some beautiful images that have come out, and the details are incredible, even cracks in the paint. And on this one over here, you can see the little pencil sketch lines that the artist used to be able to sketch the initial outline for this exhibition. Okay, so we're on to part 3 of today's talk. and I will be sharing with you some of the deinstallation stories. Okay, so the process of deinstallation was we had to be very careful with it. We negotiated a plan with the building contractors who were physically involved in deinstalling. And we came up with a number of challenges. The first challenge was that most of the models were actually built in place. And the door was too narrow for these models to actually be taken out of this exhibition space. And there's only one entrance and exit point. The other challenge that we had were that most of the dioramas, the models at least, were never actually made to be viewed completely from all sides. They were only really made to be viewed from the front. And here's a good example of the front view versus the back view. A lot of the models were also not complete. And so we strategically made decisions as to which of the models we could keep and which ones we were not able to preserve. Many of the larger models were dismantled, and what we were able to salvage, we very carefully were able to relocate to another space. Okay, so that brings me to the real fossils. So what I've been speaking about previously were the models, but in the exhibition space, there were a couple of real fossils on display. Some of them we could just pack up carefully and move by hand, but one of the main ones that we weren't able to do that with was this example of Bradysorus coelii. And this is a photograph of Boonstra in the field busy excavating that absolutely magnificent specimen. We had a bit of trouble when we tried to take it out of the display, mainly because the bones had been emplaced in concrete. And today, we mainly use the host rock to kind of keep the bones in place when we excavate a fossil from the field. And we create a plaster cast on top of those bones with the rock in place to take that fossil safely out of the field. So me and my team, including in this photograph here, Sibusiso Mtungata, we undertook to basically excavate this fossil in the exhibition. So we secured it as best we could, and we created a beautiful, nice, thick, secure plaster jacket for it. And by far the most nerve-wracking parts of this entire deinstallation process for me was watching the team of 15 strong construction workers lifting that fossil up off of the display onto the specially designed dolly that we created, or that we had contracted, which will now be the permanent home for this specimen. So the specimen is now on this very high tonnage dolly, which is housed in the collection space. And it will now be much more accessible to researchers in the future. Okay, and some of the other surprises that were waiting for us behind the dioramas were beautiful fireplaces that are actually relics of the original South African Museum building. And the original museum was actually a house, which dates to around the late 1800s. And it had the most beautiful Oregon pine flooring that was actually covered by the carpets in the dioramas. So those carpets have been pulled up, and the Oregon pine flooring has been restored, as well as these fireplaces they've also been restored. And I've been told by Wendy Black, that's the curator who's going to be using the space for exhibitions in the future, that these will be available, or will be open in the exhibition to have a look at. So that's a good thing. The other really curious thing we found stashed behind one of the dioramas was a grouping of about 3 wallets. And in his wallets, we found no cash, a random key that we have no idea what the key opens, and a few receipts for bottle stores and places in Long Street. And we suspect that perhaps this was a pickpocket stash. Somebody was picking pockets and hoying the wallets, discarding them behind the exhibitions because they figured, well, it's going to take a long time for them to get discovered. Okay, so on to part 4. I'll speak a little bit about the outreach and public engagement. Okay, so with the models that we were able to salvage from the Boonstra Dioramas, we wanted to make these accessible to the public as well. And one of the models that we were able to get off of the display was this of Bradysorus. And it's one of those incredible success stories, because if it had been made, it was about 2 meters long, and if it had been made about 3 millimeters longer, we would never have fit it through the door. So we were able to get it through the door, and we are busy restoring it now so that it can be in the placed in the Stone Bones exhibition on the 3rd floor at Iziko. And the plan for this guy is that is going to be coated in resin, and that children will be able to play on it and take photos, and it'll be a very interactive space. So this is sort of a very rudimentary little sketch that I've made of this exhibition space that we plan. And on the walls will be prints basically of those high resolution images of the backdrops. This fossil Bradysorus is already on display there. But the highlight of this historic exhibition is actually going to be the panoramic tour, which will be housed on a big touchscreen. And this will allow visitors, even though they can't see the Boonstra dioramas physically anymore, to be able to explore the dioramas in a virtual space, still at the museum. And as we speak, this is happening. The backdrops have been put up. There's our Bradysorus model, and the other model is on its way up. So this is the original fossil, the other model's on its way up, and this is the touch screen. Okay. Another way in which we're trying to make sure that as many people as possible see these dioramas is by writing popular science articles. And one of the most recent ones we've done is For the Conversation. And if you'd like to check it out, here's the link at the bottom. To date, there have been about 1,800 people that have read this article, and there's been many repostings and comments and things on social media using those hashtags. We felt it was very important to try to advertise that these dioramas have not been completely lost, because we kind of emphasize with the fact that many people have got sentimental connections to the dioramas. And for a lot of us as curators and museum researchers, we ourselves were inspired by these kinds of engaging exhibitions to study science and to study and become museum professionals. So we feel very strongly that these need to reach as wide an audience as possible. Okay, part 5, almost bear o'clock. Future plans. So the panoramic tour for us is really just the beginning. We've got our digital archive, and we have plans to create augmented and virtual reality applications from this digitized exhibition. Thanks to the Zamani project, we now have a complete LiDAR data set that we can now use to create a point cloud virtual space that can be navigated in 3D. Once this point cloud has been properly constructed, the excellent photographs can be draped over the models, the 3D models, and this will allow visitors to have an immersive experience. The other great thing that it does is it allows us to be able to compare and contrast old exhibitions with new ones. So in the future, what we could do is we could kind of drop in a 3D model of a current model of a fossil into this 3D space, and we could have the visitor actually compare and contrast the previous example with the modern example. So there are all kinds of things we can do. One of my favorite possible applications is 3D printing. Once we've got the the models made, it'll be possible for somebody to 3D print a souvenir of one of their favorite models from the Boonstra Dioramas. Okay, so this is very much a sneak preview. We're still busy with it, but over here you can see a dollhouse view, or a plan view of the diorama exhibition. And I'm going to just quickly play a video for you to show you where we are so far with the point cloud. So let's play that. Okay, so we're going to enter through the same space that we came in with the panoramic tour. There you go. And you can see the first two models on display. It looks a little ghostly. All of those individual little white points are basically laser scanning points, and they're all referenced to each other and to the point at which the LiDAR was taken. So we have a really, really good, accurate point cloud to start out with. I'm not sure why that stopped. Ah, there you go. Okay, so the point cloud, from the point cloud, we'll be able to create sort of surfaces, and these surfaces will be smoothed to create 3D models. And then those 3D models will be used as a structure to drape the images on top of. So all of the beautiful images that we've taken, crazy detail, will then be draped on the 3D structures. Okay. So watch this space. If you'd like to continue hearing about what is happening with the Boonstra Dioramas, we are trying to very actively post on Iziko's website, as well as Twitter and Instagram accounts. If you'd like to hear more about what the Karoo Palaeontology Department or division is doing at Iziko, you can follow me. I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and you can have a look at articles that I publish, both popular articles in the conversation and scientific articles. Here's my ORCID ID and Google Scholar accounts. Okay, so like with anything this ambitious, it couldn't have happened without a number of people and very, very hard, dedicated work. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Boonstra and his team. It was a visionary decision to create Karoo models that were so relatable to the public. And I think without those efforts, we would definitely have an impoverished understanding of the Karoo landscape. So as a scientist, I'm very grateful to what he and his team did. I also like to thank my colleagues at Iziko, specifically Devon, who's who's the current NRF DST intern. There he is over there. And yeah, he did a lot of work behind the scenes for this digital exhibition. Also Sibusiso Mdugata, who's a technician at the Karoo Palaeontology division. Wendy Black and Benjamin from Iziko Archaeology and Harry. They were incredibly supportive throughout the process, as was Laura Rowden, who did a lot of project management behind the scenes. And then last but not least is the Mani Project, Ralph, Heinz, Roshan, Bruce, and Stephen, who did exceptional work under some pretty difficult circumstances and pretty poor lighting. So thanks to all of them, and thanks to all of you for listening. I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and put on my video.
Thanks so much, Claire. It's fascinating to learn such different things, you know, behind the scenes. Does anybody have any questions?
I've got a couple.
I knew you would.
First is the obvious question. I mean, how much does this cost?
Yeah,
Roughly.
I don't know. You'd have to approach Zamani. They were very specific about kind of not divulging the cost because it was a collaboration. And I know a lot of their funders are one of the conditions is that they sort of it doesn't involve money. It has to involve collaboration. So if you want to know, you should speak to Zamani Project.
I mean, I imagine it's pretty expensive stuff to do.
It is.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been possible without them. The museum wouldn't have been able to fund it.
Well, the next question is, I mean, obviously this has applications to a lot of museums all over the place. It seems to me that a lot of museums could benefit from this sort of thing, but there is a downside because it could conceivably reduce foot traffic through the door and entrance receipts. So there's a business model issue as well, which needs to be resolved, I would presume. Has Iziko thought about this at this stage?
So I can't really speak for Iziko as a whole, but I have been part of conversations with curators at the museum. And most of us are of the opinion that this will actually add value to the museum. So instead of taking away foot traffic by creating a greater online presence and creating content online, you're actually making yourself you're exposing the museum to a much wider audience and increasing maintaining relevance.
Which you think will result in more foot traffic?
Well, potentially, yeah, hopefully. And we're no longer only measured by our foot traffic. We're measured by a number of other contributions that we make other than being a physical museum. As research scientists, we do a lot of things behind the scenes that never make it into the exhibition spaces. So by having a good virtual presence, we'll be able to get more people engaged, do virtual lectures, and even people that can't afford to get to the museum perhaps would be able to experience things.
Yeah. Look, one final question from me, which is, do we know who the original artist was who did those diorama backgrounds in the 1950s?
Yes, it was actually an entomology assistant called Dr. Hess. I don't have his first name, but I have been digging through the archives to try and find out. A lot of them are signed with H. Hess as the author or the artist. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Thanks.
Pleasure.
It is. It sounds like you have a great fun job. Any other questions? Oh, okay, go for it. Go on, Paul.
Thank you for the presentation here. I just want to comment there that yeah, this is such a nice thing to do, like preserving the history of the earth. So I just wanted to say that like me, I come from this side of Rwanda. So there is a place where it's called Makonde. So there are prints, animal prints on the rocks. So it was said that these rocks were still molten or partially crystallized when these animals walk on those things. So I thought maybe it could also contribute to the history of digital preservation.
That's a really good point. So you're talking about trackways, fossil trackways, and this kind of scanning technology, not necessarily sort of a three-dimensional scanning, but sort of top-down scanning, has been done for quite a long time. Laser scanning has been done by a lot of researchers in the field. There's a really good example of how it's been done quite recently at the Gansfontein fossil trackway surface near Fraserburg. You can have a look at some of the scientific papers that have come out there where they've recorded our heritage, South African heritage, with scanning in the field. And those are handheld scanners.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your comment.
If ever you wanna come and take a look this side, yeah, you can let me know and I will show you the place.
Awesome.
Thanks.
And there's your next field trip.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? I see Safisa has just joined us again. Do you have a question, Safisa?
No. Not at this moment. My apologies. I dropped off. Technology fails us at the best of times. But I'll catch the rest of it on the YouTube channel. Thank you. But it was good thus far.
Yeah.
Apologies. Yeah.
Right. If we have no more questions, I'd just like to say thank you so much. That was so interesting. Definitely a nice way to end a Friday afternoon and, you know, start beer o'clock. Have a lovely weekend, everybody, and we'll see you at the next talk. Thanks again, Claire.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Claire. My apologies.
Thank
I
you.
dropped off.
No problem.
It was very interesting. What I got. So I'm looking forward to the rest of it. Nolene, when are we getting it on YouTube?
Hopefully
Okay.
over the weekend.
I hope so.
But I have got the link to that virtual tour on my LinkedIn.
Oh yes, I was going to ask about that because it was in the presentation. Okay, that's perfect.